أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم وبه نستعين. In our first lecture, we had mentioned that why did we come up with this title for this series, The Quest for the Divine, yeah? We mentioned that the reason we came up with this title and this idea came to mind when I was reading John Schellenberg's book, Divine Hiddenness and Human Reason. This is where this whole idea came up from. So today, what I would like to do is very briefly mention what is the whole Schellenberg's theory and his argument. And then, inshallah, we will mention one of those reasons. A lot of answers have been given to this theory, to this argument, by Muslims, by non-Muslims. A lot of Christians have given answers to this, and that's why he kept on reviewing his argument. That is not our discussion. What I would like to focus is on one of the reasons, which I personally humbly believe is one of the main reasons that why atheists become atheists or they turn to the arguments the way they present. Okay? So, to start with, John Schellenberg, in his book Divine Hiddenness, on page 1, that is how he starts. He says that we may ask, would God be hidden from us? Okay? So this is the whole thing we want to discuss. Is really God hidden from us? Or there's an issue which we need to find out, that why is God hidden from some? Okay? So we'll be discussing one of the reasons. So Schellenberg now discusses, he says that we may ask, would God be hidden from us? Then he continues, he says, surely a morally perfect being, good, just, loving, would show himself more clearly. So he says that if a God is loving and caring and a just God, then it's important for him, rather it's obligatory on him to show himself more and make himself more clear. And because he has not made himself clear, so that's how he goes on. He says, hence the weakness of our evidence for God is not a sign that God is hidden. Okay? So because we cannot find the God, it's not a weakness from us. Rather, it's a revelation that God does not exist. Can you see the conclusion he's trying to take? Okay? From this divine hiddenness, he's going to conclude that God doesn't exist. Now, come look at his 5 premises, it will become more clearer. On page 83, in his book, he mentions his argument, rather he summarizes his argument in 5 premises, or in 5 components. And if I read each one, you will notice some of the places we as believers can find out flaws, that where are some of the defects and some of the flaws. Yeah. So premise number 1, he says that if there is a God, he is perfectly loving. And this is something we as believers also accept, that God is all loving and all caring. The issue we have with Schellenberg is the conclusion, the way he's defining loving and the conclusion he's trying to take from this loving God. This was premise number 1. Premise number 2, he says that if a perfectly loving God exists, reasonable non-belief does not occur. Okay, this is the conclusion we are trying to disagree with. He's trying to say that if this loving God and caring God exists, then there should not be anyone who disbelieves and should hold non-belief. Rather, everybody should believe in God. Okay, it's a very crazy example which comes to mind, that if somebody were to say that if love exists outside, then everybody should be loving. Every person you meet should be loving and caring. This is not how we conclude, yeah? That because love exists, so everybody should be all loving and all caring. Or rather, A better example, if you say that mothers are loving creatures, then all the children should be loved. When we see that all children are not loved, so then we take conclusion that mothers are not loving. This is a very strange way of concluding. Okay, can you see this, the way he is trying to conclude? But that's not our discussion. So that's premise number two. Premise number three says reasonable non-belief occurs. So when we see people, there are others who disbelieve in God, they don't believe in God. So premise number four then, no perfectly loving God exists. So there's no loving God because there are people who are disbelieving and God has not clarified himself, has not made clear himself to these people. Number five, then he takes the conclusion. This is a high jump he takes. He says that thus there is no God. Okay? Can you see the way his argument is being presented? Okay? From a loving God, this loving God has to present himself and make himself clear to people. When he doesn't make himself clear to people, that means he is not loving. Rather, he's hidden. No, no. Rather, he doesn't exist anymore. Okay? Now, our discussion is not his argument. As I mentioned, that there are a lot of answers which have been given to this argument. What I would like to discuss is this issue. What I feel, this is a problem with majority, if not all, the atheists and those who think like atheists. Rather, it's an issue which is now coming into our communities. When I say our communities, Muslim communities, Christian communities, and that's the issue of this whole issue, the way Richard Dawkins puts it, as dualism and monism. Okay, what is dualism? Dualism is a dualist is a person who believes that there is matter and there is mind. Okay, so he's a dualist. He believes that there is matter and there's metaphysical. So you want to call it mind, you want to call it soul, you want to call it spirit, whatever you want to call it. But there are two components in a human being. Contrary, a monist is somebody who believes that no, everything is matter, matter, matter. Okay? Now, why do I say it's coming into our communities? The reason we are also not being able to sort some of the issues, rather we're seeing some of the youths questioning some of the issues, it's because this distinction is not being made. When you don't make a distinction between matter and metaphysical, then you will not be able to come to some of the conclusions. Okay? So, for example, a youth will ask, why do I pray 5 times a day? Why do I have to pray in Arabic? Okay? Now, because these are metaphysical realities, however much you bang your head on, you will not be able to get to an answer that why am I praying 5 times a day and not 6 times a day and not 2 times a day? Okay? Why am I praying in Arabic and not in English or not in Kiswahili or any other language? Okay? Or, for example, one of the major doubts which is being put that this was the Jahiliyyah practice that you go circumambulate through the Kaaba. This is a Jahiliyyah practice which is not understood at all. Okay. Now, because these are metaphysical realities, they cannot be understood by the mind. Okay. Now, one of these major issues which some of our youths also go through is this non-distinction between metaphysical realities and physical realities. Now, when you come to, for example, sadaqah, khums, zakat, these are issues which our mind accepts. Somebody is poor, somebody cannot afford, we go help them. Okay? But we cannot comprehend the metaphysical realities. Okay? So if this distinction is made, a lot of realities will start getting clear. Okay? So similarly, now at a greater level, now you have the atheists who totally deny altogether that we are totally not metaphysical at all. We don't have a metaphysical component to our self. Okay, so to give you an example, Richard Dawkins, in his God Delusion, the famous book of his, on page 180, he quotes Paul Bloom, a psychologist. Now, you notice that this is a question which atheists get asked. Again, this is not my discussion, so I'll not be going into it. But this is a question which the atheists get questioned that, okay, where does religion come from? Okay, where does morality come from? Because these are metaphysical realities, these are not physical realities. So they believe in the view which is called the byproduct view. Okay, so religion, they call it a byproduct of, for example, superstition. Morality, they call a byproduct of something. Okay, now that's again not my discussion. Inshallah, sometime in the future we can discuss this. What I want to discuss is this dualism and monism. He then says that we humans, especially children, are natural born dualists. Now he accepts it somehow and then later wants to deny it. And he says this has been implanted somehow with superstitions. Okay, we are born dualists, meaning that we believe that there is matter and there's a component in ourselves which is non-matter and non-physical. So he then goes on himself. He says, a dualist acknowledges a fundamental distinction between matter and mind. Mind is the same metaphysical reality. Then he goes on. A monist, by contrast, believes that mind is a manifestation of matter and nothing else. You see that? They'd want to deny altogether this metaphysical reality which we have within ourselves. And everything goes on with the explanation of matter. And that is why, so just a bracket, if I can open and then come back to the discussion. And that is why you will notice that within atheists, you will find these two different types of atheists. The ones I call hardcore atheists and the moderate atheists. So the moderate atheists, the like of Neil deGrasse Tyson, if I'm mentioning his name nicely, uh, I was listening to one of his interviews. You see, there are 3 to 4 questions atheists have not been able to answer till date. Now, when moderate atheists are questioned on that, they will tell you we don't know about it. So when deGrasse Tyson was asked about it, he was asked, what's the origin of universe? You notice that universe, there was a time when there was no time, there was no space, there was no matter, there was nothing. They themselves agree. Rather, Stephen Hawking also, in his book, the last book of his, he agrees that there was nothing then. So if there was nothing, then out of nothing, how did this whole thing come up? Now they're trying to prove it with the whole theory of Darwinism, which is a very absurd way of proving origin of the universe. So when Neil deGrasse Tyson was asked that what's the origin of universe, he says we don't know, and that's really an answer an atheist should be giving, because he confines himself to matter and science. Science cannot go beyond this universe. Okay, it cannot go to a time when there was nothing. Okay, so he has to say nothing, and we don't know about it. Similarly, about origin of life, the nature of consciousness. Okay, this has become an issue also for the atheists, and the issue of morality. And that is why you will notice that the likes of Sam Harris now are proposing that we should take our morality from science. Now, sometimes I don't know, they realize themselves what they are talking about. God knows. They go in circles trying to explain a theory which doesn't make sense at the end of the day. Okay. Uh, these 4 questions, when asked by to a moderate atheist, you will see they will say that we don't know the answer for it. But you ask in hardcore atheists, the likes of Richard Dawkins and the Four Horsemen, you will notice that they want to explain the non-explainable using matter. Okay? And this is what's going on. Now, sometimes we also get into the same issues One of those issues is through this dualism and monism. Okay, this is one thing. The second thing, you will notice that there's a discussion going on. Before I come to my discussion, there's a discussion going on. There's a terminology they are using called singularity or transhumanism. Okay, this is a terminology. Ray Kurzweil, the futurist. Inshallah, if we talk about futurism later, we'll talk about him. Inshallah, he's been using this terminology a lot. So, what are they proposing now? Why am I bringing this up? I'll explain why am I bringing it up. Uh, what they believe in that machines, you notice with the advancement of technology and AI, they are trying to make the machines as intelligent as possible. So now they are talking about a day when the machines will become not only intelligent but super intelligent. Okay, they are looking at their day and predicting of a day in technology where the machine will be even more intelligent than the human. God forbid from that those days. It's scary. Scholars have written against this. As much as technology is good, AI is good, but the dangers which some scholars are talking about are huge. Okay, are huge. So, uh, so what's going to happen now? So Kurzweil, Elon Musk, these are all people proposing of singularity. Now, what's happening is the day when the machines, or the way they call it, the cyborgs, yeah, the cyborgs will become super intelligent and they'll merge with human intelligence. And this is the point of singularity, or the time when they become transhuman. Do you get me? Now, what's going to be the issue? How is it related to our topic? So, this whole issue, we are trying to prove that we have a soul, we have a spirit, we have a mind which is metaphysical. Through it, all the issues about God and ethics and all that can be explained. What they're trying to take us to a world, philosophically, intellectually, they have not been able to answer these questions. So now they want to take us to a world where they will now have these machines in which they will do mind uploading. That's the terminology they use. So, for those of you who have seen the Matrix, for example, yeah, uh, I've not seen a new movie, so I don't know. But this old movies, Matrix was a good movie to show that this actor is being taken to a place where now everything is being loaded into his mind. So that's the day they are now looking at, that the machines will be loaded with information, with emotions, with ethics, with behavior, with all that, to come and show that there'll come a time that there is no need to prove the need of a soul and a spirit which is metaphysical. Okay, rather, if you read Homo Deus of Yuval Harari, uh, there are dangerous things he speaks about and how these people are trying to take it to divinity. Okay, inshallah, if we talk about it later, we can talk about it. So, one of the things I would like to suggest is Muslim communities, we need to start talking from now. Okay, what I find is we are very passive at times. We wake up 50 years late, 60 years late. I remember when the moon issue happened, if I'm not mistaken, when the Westerners were going to the moon, from the Muslims, nobody went to the moon. Yeah, so they were not worried. How should we pray in the moon? How should, what do you do? Ghusl, do you do wudu and all that? We were not worried because nobody went there. Now, in 2007, uh, a Muslim now planned to go to the moon, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, they plan to go to the moon now. So now, this was from Malaysia. So 150 scholars were called in Malaysia to come and discuss this issue. How many years later? 50 years later. Okay, and you see the same thing in digital currency, and the same thing which will happen with AI. When the problem reaches us, that's when we wake up. What I'm suggesting is we start collectively discuss these issues, the political issues which are going on. All these things need to be discussed so that when the problem reaches us, we are well prepared for it. Okay, so similarly, one of these issues is this, about the technology and its advancement. Okay, so now coming back to our discussion, what we were discussing was that the biggest issue and the biggest factor which takes the atheists to atheism and matters related to that is a non-distinction between dualism and monism. Okay, they want to reject this part of our human part, the metaphysical part of ourselves. Now, this is not me saying it also. So you heard, you saw Richard Dawkins. Rather, I don't know, for those of you who are following up again, two news came up from the atheist world that two atheists became Christians. You must have heard if you're following up. Ayan Hersi Ali, the Somalian lady, she converted to Christianity, and Ridwan Aydemir, the Turkish Muslim, he also converted to Christianity. Ridwan Aydemir is the one who was running the Apostate Prophet YouTube channel, for those of you who are following up. Okay, he was a Muslim, converted to atheism, became a hardcore atheist. Okay, really, yani, against Islam and all whatnot. If you had heard him, I would like to discuss Ayan Harsi Ali. She just few months ago she had a conversation with Richard Dawkins, so an ex-atheist who was a friend and still is a friend of Richard Dawkins. They work together. Is now discussing with an atheist. Okay, now look at how she explains what happened to her. She says that why did she convert to Christianity? She says, I had a personal crisis. This video is there online. It's a 1.5 hour video. It's something worth listening. She says, I had a personal crisis. She lived for a decade, almost 10 years, with intense depression and anxiety. So she herself says, I hit rock bottom where I didn't want to live anymore. I wanted to kill myself. So she says, I went from one therapist to another doctor, tried everything. Nothing worked. So one day she says that one of the therapists told her that your problem is not going to get sorted by science. Okay, this is where, if you pay attention, this is the summary of my discussion basically. Uh, your problem is not going to get sorted with science and therapies and all whatnot. Rather, your situation, this is the exact term she used. She says, the therapist told me you are going through spiritual bankruptcy. Okay, this is exactly what we are saying, that this divine hiddenness is this spiritual bankruptcy. Or rather, the Quran talks about it. وَلَا تَكُونُوا كَالَّذِينَ نَسُوا اللَّهَ فَأَنْسَاهُمْ أَنفُسَهُمْ. Okay, don't be like those people who forget God. Once you forget God, once you forget this metaphysical reality you have where you connect yourself with God, God cannot be connected via science. Okay? Matter, God is metaphysical. So you cannot connect via matter with God. You have to use your metaphysical part to connect to the metaphysical reality of God. So once you kill that, once you suppress it, then you undergo spiritual bankruptcy. Okay, and this is exactly what Allah is saying. Don't be like those people when you forget God. فَأَنْسَاهُمْ أَنفُسَهُمْ. They forget themselves. This is exactly what Ayan Harsi Ali is also talking about. Okay, so she says that when this therapist told me about this, I said, I have nothing to lose. Okay, I've tried everything. Let me try this also. So she says that what happened after that is a miracle by itself. Okay? Faith, religion, personal experiences. This is the word I want to emphasize upon. Personal experiences feel connected to something higher and greater than myself. Okay, once you turn and activate your metaphysical part of yourself, then that connection comes in, that divine hiddenness then comes out then. So she says, I feel my zest for life is back. Okay, now then she goes on, and this is something I want to also emphasize upon, that and that experience has filled me with humility. I have to say it, and it is something that's very subjective. It's extremely difficult to explain. And this is what I say, that spirituality has to be experienced, has to be felt. Okay? Now, please keep the previous lectures also in mind. Don't understand this in vacuum. Understand that also. Listen to those previous lectures, and then also this will also make sense together. Okay. So then she's being asked. Now, this is a famous question which these atheists keep on asking. Then, do you believe in miracles? Do you believe in virgin birth and all whatnot? So, Ayan Harsi Ali, again, I'm not promoting Ayan Harsi Ali, okay? She I believe she still has an agenda against Islam, okay, which is not my topic. But if you go listen to her, the way she explains Islam and the way she talks about Islam is very negative, as if that feelings and that hatred towards Islam has not come out. Okay, okay, that's not my topic. She goes on telling Richard Dawkins that I think that is something subjective. Faith is something subjective. Why? Because metaphysical realities are not, you cannot tell anybody. You experience them yourself. You feel them yourself, okay? There's a choice in the things that you see and perceive that a different person cannot perceive it. Okay, so the example she gives is beautiful. She says art and music. Okay, so for us, for example, the halal music. She tells Richard Dawkins, she says that I think you do enjoy a great deal of Christian art and music. She says when you look at the art and the painting and music, she says that at times you look at the painting of Pollock. Now, I don't know who this Pollock is. She says that people are crazy to pay millions for this art and hang it in their walls in their house. Why would he do that? Or why would a person do that? They're seeing something in the art which I'm not seeing it. They're experiencing and feeling in the paint and the art which I'm not feeling it and experiencing it. Rather, she says that there's some people she knows that they have cried when they've seen the art of Pollock also. This is the feeling a person goes through. Okay? So then she concludes by saying, in the same way, you are moved by certain pieces of music. So the fact that I have faith and I choose to have faith because of what I have experienced. Again, I'm repeating, when you kill this metaphysical part of yourself, and that is why if you go talk to any atheist, they are not interested to listen at all to this metaphysical part of yourself. They want to kill it straight away. They don't even want to feel it or experience it. And that's why Karen Armstrong, the famous author, the nun turned author, when she talks about God, she says that God is something to be felt. Okay, God is something to be experienced. Now, she has a theory which I totally don't agree with it in her book, God in History. She has a theory which she gives, which again, but this is the message I share with her, that God needs to be experienced. God needs to be felt. Okay? So she says that I choose to have faith because of what I've experienced is just real for me as is real for millions of other believers. Do you get me? Okay. Now, the moment you shut off this, you don't get that experience. But the moment you keep that alive, you start experiencing God. Okay. And this is where I would like to give some few practical examples today. And I don't want to make it very theoretical discussion. And I finish, inshallah. So, a few examples I would like to give. So, one is I would like to recommend reading Soren Kierkegaard. Again, I'm sorry if I'm mispronouncing these names. The famous Danish philosopher of the 19th century. Uh, he was still accused. He was a devout Christian, but he was accused by Christians of not being a Christian because he really condemned Christianity. Christianity, according to him, had become a cultural religion rather than having that faith. Now, faith for him, so he discusses this in his book, Fear and Trembling. If you read it, you will see that the way he proposes faith as experience. Okay? Now, again, I don't totally accept with his understanding, totally, but there's a portion of it I accepted because he totally denies rationality altogether. This is why I disagree with him. But the way he explains faith, it's a person worth reading for those of you who have time. But the examples I would like to give is, for example, Ustad Nu'man Ali Khan. Okay, for those of you who know him now, he's a famous Quran mufassir and a Quran teacher. He himself, this is online. If you can go search it on YouTube, you will see this himself saying it. He says he was either he went into atheism or he became an atheist for a while. He was a person who didn't used to pray, who didn't used to observe any of the religious responsibilities and duties. He himself says that one day he was traveling with his friend and they were traveling in a car. So the time of prayers came in. His friend tells him that, do you allow me? I will go and pray. You can sit in the car, I'll go and pray, and I'll just come back. To that extent. Can you see that? That he wasn't praying. So Nouman Ali Khan says that when my friend left, I said, okay, let me just go see what are they doing. He goes inside the mosque, and he says, okay, let me try praying myself. What are they doing? So he says that I started praying. He says the experience was so different, was so tremendous. How do you put it? Experiences cannot be described, you see. So he says that experience was such that this man changed altogether. He says today's Nu'man Ali Khan is because of that single experience. Okay? Or another example. Now, this is an example for those of you who've been to Mashhad. You might have heard of this story. They say that, you know, uh, before the haram of today of Mashhad has been expanded, haram of Mashhad was a small haram where the shrine was, yeah? Besides it, there was nothing out there. It's expanded slowly, slowly, yeah? So besides it, there's a masjid and a mosque called, this is now part of the haram, but before it was outside the haram. It's called Masjid Goharshad, yeah, the mosque of Goharshad. Now Goharshad was a lady herself. She built this mosque. It's an interesting, very beautiful story being mentioned. She says there was a boy who used to work as a constructor there. He was helping in building that mosque. So one day, Lady Goharshad comes for a visit to check how the mosque is going on and how the building of the mosque is going on. And suddenly the eyes of this boy falls on this lady and somehow is attracted to, the way they say love at first sight, yeah? I don't know if there is something called it love at first sight or not, but uh, he falls in love with this lady. Now, this lady was married, but somehow this boy was, insistent that he wants this lady. So his mother talks to him that this lady is married, this and that. He says, but I want this lady. Somehow the news reaches Lady Goharshad. Now look at these. Some people have spiritual techniques of getting people closer to God. So she turns back and tells the mother of this boy that, okay, no problem, I'm ready to get married to your son with one condition. Look at the condition now. She says, with one condition that the boy should do i'tikaf in the mosque which we are building for 40 days. After 40 days, I'm ready to get married to him. The boy who is in love now will do anything. Even the whole year, he might have done i'tikaf, yeah? So he starts doing i'tikaf for 40 days. On the 39th day now, they come to him and ask him that, what happened? What is your decision? So he turns back to his mom and tells his mom that I don't want this lady anymore. I've connected to another beloved now. I've found somebody else to love and somebody else to connect to, and I don't want this worldly love anymore. You see this change which comes in. Now, as much as a person should have explained this boy that Baba, this lady is married, this lady, you cannot marry her. Logically, intellectually, you cannot talk to this person. The only time this feeling comes in, this change comes in, is when you yourself experience that love and that connection with the divine. Okay? And this is why I like, so again, we are going through this massacre in Gaza again. Wallahi, Allah help these people. Sometimes you cry over what's happening. So I was listening to a doctor, a Turkish doctor. He was narrating this. He went to Gaza for a while to help. So he was speaking in this month of Ramadan when I heard him. So he says that he mentions two incidents which are related to spirituality, and this is what I want to mention. He says that you see in Gaza, people get bombed at one time, a lot of people get injured at one time, they all come in a hospital at one time. Yeah, we see this, and especially just now, the way they're attacking children. I don't know what fascination and what issues these Zionists have with the children. Maybe they want to kill the population of the Palestinians. Allah help these Palestinians, wallahi. But the spirituality these Palestinians are giving us, wallahi, it's a lesson. You sometimes cry. I at least cry over myself that, God, would I pass your test if I was in that situation? I don't know. I don't know. Allah help me and all of us. So this doctor is saying that a lot of kids were brought to the theater and to the place of where the operation was being done. So he says now there was only one table for where the operation could be done. Now you just imagine 20 children are being brought together with their parents. They're now being with the feeling that they need to be operated. The doctor says one table, we could take one child at a time. Now you just imagine if you are a parent, what goes through your mind? A materialist and somebody who just looks at matter would quickly come and say, please take my son or my daughter quickly, operate on him or her, and then others. This doctor says that we didn't hear from one single mother that take our children, take my child first. As if everybody was ready to sacrifice for the other. Where does this zeal come from? Where does this feeling come from? If not that connection and that experience with the divine. Rather, the second example was so moving. Wallahi, you cry over it. He says that there's a boy, 14, 15-year-old boy, again, to the came with a lot of injuries. Now we were supposed to operate on him. The injury was so bad that this boy was hurting so much. So the pain was so much. When we were operating on him, the pain was increasing on this boy. So he said the boy turned to us and told us, "Is it no? There's no way. Can you sort out my pain, please? Meaning, can you give me some more anesthesia or something to decrease my pain, or some painkiller to decrease my pain?" Suddenly, after mentioning this is the doctor mentioning this. He says that suddenly he turned away and he started speaking something to himself. He says when we went near to him, we heard him talking to his Lord. Okay, he talks to his Lord and tells his God, God, I'm sorry. I'm asking somebody else apart from you. I'm sorry for that. See the level of connection and that spirituality and that feeling of intimacy with God, that this moment, this was not a haram act also to ask the doctor to reduce pain on him. But that moment of him asking this doctor, he felt that why did he turn back to somebody and not God? Okay? And this is exactly what you see in the du'as of our Imams alayhim salam. Imam Sajjad alayhi salam in Dua Abu Hamza, for example, he says, Alhamdulillah alladhi la ad'u ghayrahu. Ya Allah, I praise this Allah that I don't want to call anybody else and ask anybody else apart from Him. Now, you can ask in this dunya, you can ask anybody, you can go to somebody and say that I need something. But these people, when they reach that connection they have with God, that intimacy they have with God, they feel that they cannot talk to anybody apart from God. They don't want to feel connected to anybody apart from God. And that is why Imam says, وَلَوْ دَعَوْتُ غَيْرَهُ لَمْ يَسْتَجِبْ دُعَائِي. God, I feel that if I would call anybody apart from you, nobody would respond to me. This is the belief which gets ingrained in them. Okay, this feeling of connection which goes in them, and that is why Imam Ali alayhi salam, when he looks at the world, when he talks to Allah, he says, "Wa bi asma'ika allati mala'at arkana kulli shay." God, everything I look in this universe is you. Okay, so there's a table, there's a chair, there's food, there is all. Now everything Imam looks at is God. That's how it goes on. Okay, because of that connection which comes in, and this all comes in because the metaphysical side, the spiritual side has been made so alive, and this is what Quran puts it as الذين آمنوا أشد حبا لله. Allah, this is one of the beautiful verses of the Quran. May Allah grant us this station that not only they believe in God, not only are they loving God, rather ashaddu hubban. They are extremely in love with God. It means they're extremely connected to God. Okay? And let me give one more example and I finish, inshallah. And that is why in the hadith we are told that, so this hadith, Sheikh Tusi narrates it in his Amali. This is from the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. He tells Abu Dhar, Ya Abu Dhar, Inna Allah ja'ala qurrata ayni fi salah. Allah has made my tranquility, my feeling of peace, that feeling of connection I feel with the divine in salah. وَحَبَّبَ إِلَيَّ كَمَا حَبَّبَ. Now look at the example. He says, Allah has made this salah and this prayer so beloved to me. The example and the analogy the Prophet gives is the example of a hungry person and a thirsty person. A hungry person sees nothing but food. Okay, if sometimes they even dream of food. A thirsty person does nothing but think of water. Now, the Prophet says the way a hungry and thirsty person look at food and water, that's how I look at this connection with my Lord. And then he says that a person who is hungry and thirsty, when they drink and when they eat, they get satiated. Okay? But وَأَنَا لَا أَشْبَعُ مِنَ الصَّلَاةِ. I don't get satiated with the salah and this talking to my Lord. I keep on talking and I still want to talk more and more. And that is why طه ما أنزلنا عليك القرآن لتشقى. Don't put yourself into troubles, okay? قم الليل إلا قليلا. Oh, Prophet, reduce it, reduce it. We know how you're connected to us, okay? So, in conclusion, what I wanted to give the example, what the message I wanted to give was, this is the conclusion I would like to give. This is again Imam Sajjad alayhi salam in Dua Abu Hamza Thumali. The reason God is not hidden from us, God is very apparent, okay? It's just that we have to go look for him, and that is the reason, that is the solution Imam gives. وَأَنَّكَ لَا تَحْتَجِبَ عَنْ خَلْقِكَ وَأَنَّكَ لَا تَحْتَجِبُ عَنْ خَلْقِكَ. Oh Allah, you are not veiled and hidden. Same words which Schellinger uses, okay, that God is hidden. Imam says you are not hidden, you are not veiled from us and from your creation. إِلَّا أَن تَحْجُبَهُمُ الْأَعْمَالُ دُونَكَ. Oh Allah, it's their own actions, it's their own way of life which is stopping them from seeing you. Okay, so this was the conclusion I would like to give, that our God is all loving, is all caring, is ready to be known. The only thing is we need to take a step so that we can know him. Let's pray to Allah in these few days of Ramadan. Allah should make us experience this feeling of meeting him, of getting connected to him and getting intimate to him, inshallah. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.